Good morning, you're watching AnewZ. I'm Dilek. These are the top stories. France is to provide €2 billion in extra military aid to Ukraine. Trump places 25% tariffs on imported autos. Canada calls it a direct attack. Muslims hold overnight prayers in Mecca Grand Mosque to mark Laylat al-Qadr, the Night of Power. French President Emmanuel Macron has pledged an additional €2 billion in military aid to Ukraine to strengthen the country's defence capabilities. The announcement was made alongside Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and comes ahead of a crucial summit in Paris to discuss further military assistance and potential steps toward a ceasefire.
France will provide some €2 billion worth of military aid to Ukraine. French President Emmanuel Macron made the announcement alongside Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He joined Macron for the briefing ahead of an important summit on Ukraine's future. The deal will include anti-tank missiles, surface-to-air missiles, armoured vehicles and drones.
France has from the start provided capabilities that answer to the priority needs of the Ukrainian army forces, and we have prepared additional assistance with MILAN anti-tank missiles, air defence means, such as MICA missiles that are equipped in the Mirage jets that were delivered, and MISTRAL surface-to-air defence missiles. To resist on the front, the Ukrainian army will also receive armoured vehicles, tanks, as well various ammunition, some teleoperated or drones, and we also advanced on the cooperation in terms of satellites and intelligence.
The pledge comes as Macron accuses Russia of reinterpreting and rewriting recent limited ceasefire deals. Moscow says it ordered a halt on certain targets, but strikes on energy sites have continued, according to Kiev. Zelensky hopes that the US will be able to put pressure on Moscow to agree to a 30-day ceasefire.
Let's hope and believe that the US has enough power to press Russian President Vladimir Putin into an unconditional ceasefire.
The announcement comes just one day before a major summit in Paris on Thursday. Around 30 leaders will discuss further military support and potential steps toward a ceasefire. The summit will focus on strengthening security guarantees and coordinating the international response to the ongoing war.
Russian forces launched a large-scale drone attack on Kharkiv, Ukraine's second-largest city, injuring 9 people late on Wednesday, according to local authorities. The strike sparked 4 fires in the city centre, with emergency services sharing images of firefighters battling flames amid rubble. Officials say at least 12 drone strikes hit the city, located 30 kilometres from the Russian border. A separate drone attack also caused fires in Dnipro, though no casualties were reported there. US President Donald Trump says he's still imposing automotive tariffs of up to 25% on imported goods. Trump says the tax hikes will come into effect on the 2nd of April. Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney is calling the move an attack on the Canadian economy and vows to defend the country's interests.
US President Donald Trump continues to push for 25% tariffs on imported vehicles that are set to begin next week on the 2nd of April. Tax hikes will also be imposed on car parts, which are often shipped in from other countries before getting assembled in the US. Industry experts warn of higher prices and disruptions to supply chains. However, Trump says the measure will boost American manufacturing and help raise revenue to offset his promised tax cuts.
And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff. We start off with a 2.5% base, which is what we were at, and we go to 25%. Plants are going up all over the United States, and many of them have already been started. We're getting early electricity taken care of. We're getting permits very quickly for them. and we're going to make their life very happy. They're coming in with tens of billions of dollars.
Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney is calling the tariffs a direct attack, pledging swift retaliation. He says his government is considering a response that could involve counter-tariffs on US goods.
President Trump announced 25% tariffs against our auto industry. And this is a direct attack, to be clear, a direct attack on the very workers that I stood in front of, uniform workers I stood in front of this morning at the Ambassador Bridge, a bridge that is a symbol and a reality up until now of the tight ties between our two countries, ties of kinship, ties of commerce, ties that are in the process of being broken. We will defend our workers. We will defend our companies. We will defend our country, and we will defend it together.
The US imported roughly 8 million cars last year, accounting for about $240 billion in trade and roughly half of overall sales. Analysts estimate that the cost of a car could rise significantly, with 25% tariffs on parts from Mexico and Canada alone, adding up to $4,000 to $10,000.
US Vice President J.D. Vance is visiting Greenland with a focus on national security. The visit comes amid growing tensions over Greenland's strategic importance, which has drawn criticism from local political leaders.
US Vice President J.D. Vance will accompany his wife on a trip to Greenland, stating that its security is vital for global stability. While the visit was initially planned as a cultural trip, Vance's participation has shifted the focus to national security. He plans to visit a Space Force outpost on Greenland's northwest coast, emphasising concerns over growing threats in the Arctic region.
A lot of other countries have threatened Greenland, have threatened to use its territories and its waterways to threaten the United States, to threaten Canada, and of course to threaten the people of Greenland. So we're going to check out how things are going there.
A Greenlandic MP criticised US Vice President J.D. Vance's planned visit, calling it disrespectful to Greenland's political process.
I think the whole process has been quite chaotic. I think it's fair to say that there hasn't been respect for the political processes in Greenland. We have negotiations about the upcoming government of Greenland, Naalakkersuisut, and we also have an election for the municipalities, and therefore I think it's been disrespectful, and in many ways I think the timing is wrong.
Greenland, an autonomous territory of Denmark, holds significant strategic value due to its location and vast natural resources. In March 2025, US President Donald Trump reiterated his desire for the United States to annex Greenland, emphasizing its strategic importance for national and international security. Greenland's outgoing Prime Minister, Mute Egede, condemned the US approach as highly aggressive, while Denmark's Prime Minister accused Washington of exerting undue pressure. The recent March 2025 elections in Greenland saw significant shifts, with the centre-right Democrats securing 10 seats, signalling a potential change in government direction. As coalition talks begin, the new political landscape may influence Greenland's stance on its relationship with the US and its Arctic interests.
The UN calls on the international community for fast and broad sanction easing on Syria. Fragility and hope mark a new era in Syria amid ongoing violence and aid struggles.
UN called for urgent international action to ease sanctions on Syria to overcome the immediate challenges towards recovery after the collapse of 14 years of Bashar Assad's regime. UN Special Envoy for Syria, Geir Pedersen, told the Security Council that there is a need of economic future and international support for Syrians. Syrians need an economic future, he added, welcoming humanitarian pledges made at the 9th Brussels conference on 17th March to support Syria's recovery. However, observing that more resources will be needed, he also urged fast and broad sanctions easing. Tom Fletcher, Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, cited progress on the expanded cross-border deliveries and mentioned a need for member states to ease sanctions. At Security Council, Tom Fletcher urged decisive action to support people of Syria. Sanctions implemented by UN, EU and US against Syria have led to trade limitations, shortage of medical equipment, medical supplements and medicine, disruption of financial services and difficulties with international investments.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has supervised the test of artificial intelligence-powered suicide drones. That's according to state media, which reports he also inspected upgraded reconnaissance unmanned aerial vehicles designed for land and sea surveillance. Photographs show a drone striking a tank-shaped target before bursting into flames. It's also reported that he toured newly developed intelligence and electronic warfare equipment, including a large reconnaissance aircraft. He says AI and unmanned systems must be the core of North Korea's future military strategy. The Armenian parliament has approved the draft law on initiating the process of the Republic of Armenia's accession to the European Union. The civil contract faction backed the bill with 64 votes, while the opposition was split. One faction voted against and another abstained. The government also revised the wording, removing a reference to the will of the people, and emphasised democratic development, security and the rule of law. However, Deputy Foreign Minister Paryur Hovhannisyan clarified that this does not yet mean Armenia is officially applying for European Union membership. As the European Union continues its expansion discussions, one country's name was notably absent, Georgia. While Ukraine, Moldova and the Western Balkans took centre stage in European Council President Antonio Costa's remarks, Georgia's path to integration remains uncertain. With stalled reforms, political tensions and growing concerns over democratic backsliding, is Tbilisi losing its place on the EU's priority list?
European Council President Antonio Costa did not mention Georgia while discussing EU enlargement process during his speech in Brussels on March 25, instead emphasizing work with Ukraine, Moldova and Western Balkans. His omission raises questions about Georgia's standing in EU expansion process. Despite holding the candidate status, Georgia's European integration has stalled. The ruling Georgian Dream Party has delayed further progress until 2028, citing the need for internal reforms. However, critics argue that the government policies, including democratic backsliding and its strained relations with Brussels, have contributed to its exclusion of EU priorities. The opposition and civil society groups blame the government for deliberately slowing the integration process, warning that Georgia is risking falling behind other candidate status. While the EU has not altered its stance, Costa's remarks reflect a shift in focus towards the countries demonstrating actively engagement. With political tensions in Georgia high and uncertainty over its long-term European course, the coming months will be crucial for determining whether the country faces further distance from Brussels or regain the momentum. It's Nina Nikolashvili reporting from Tbilisi, AnewZ.
Kyrgyzstan has officially ratified a key border treaty with Tajikistan. The move marks a significant step toward resolving a century-long border dispute between the two nations. The two countries had been in disagreement over 503 kilometres of their approximately 970-kilometre border.
President Sadir Japarov of Kyrgyzstan has signed a law ratifying the treaty on the Kyrgyz-Tajik state border, which was agreed upon with Tajikistan on March 13th in Bishkek. According to the Presidential Press Service, Kyrgyzstan's Supreme Council approved the law on March 19th. The law was created to officially define the Kyrgyz-Tajik border and complete the necessary state procedures for recognizing and ratifying the treaty. The establishment of a legal framework between Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan aims to ensure stability and security, improve conditions for citizens, especially in border regions, and strengthen socio-economic and humanitarian cooperation, the presidential administration stated. On March 13th, Presidents Sadir Japarov and Emomali Rahmon held a bilateral meeting in Bishkek. Following their talks, they signed the treaty on the delimitation and demarcation of the Kyrgyz-Tajik border. The border issue between Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan has been going on since 1924, with the two countries repeatedly clashing. Thousands of people have been killed in conflicts along the border in the past 30 years. This agreement would settle issues related to nearly 500 kilometers of frontiers. It also includes clauses stipulating mutual access to water and energy facilities along the border.
On China's growing presence in Central Asia, especially Kazakhstan, in the form of investments and loans for developing infrastructure, energy and industry, we earlier spoke to international relations expert Nurbolat Nishanbayev from Almaty.
When we talk about Chinese presence in Kazakhstan in general, Chinese philosophy towards financial investment and the others are quite different than the Western. We know from the history when we made a business, when we get aid from the Western, one of the main criteria was the democracy, liberal ideas, creating inclusive society. When we trade with Chinese government, usually they don't require such a kind of requirements, open transparency in government, etc., etc. So I think that will be one of the differences of Chinese existence in Kazakhstan, including in Central Asia. But however, in international relations, in the last couple of years, we have seen Chinese trap diplomacy, financial trap diplomacy, that's becoming quite popular across the globe. I think that would be even better when we look at Chinese philosophy towards financial policies. But to be short, Kazakhstan started even more serious Chinese vector of their foreign policy, because Kazakhstan historically had held multi-vector foreign policy. One of the eastern vector was China. I think it's a time to rise back Chinese vector in order to keep the balance in the region.
Millions in Afghanistan are struggling to access clean water as aid agencies warn of a deepening crisis. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has more.
Afghanistan is facing a worsening water crisis, with millions struggling to access clean drinking water and basic sanitation. Aid agencies warn that the situation is critical and requires urgent action. According to the UN Habitat, an estimated 21 million Afghans, more than half of the population, are in desperate need of water, sanitation, and health services. Major cities like Kabul, Kandahar, and Herat are seeing rapidly depleting groundwater reserves, raising concerns over long-term sustainability. Stephanie Luce, a senior official at UN Habitat, says Afghanistan's water infrastructure is in urgent need of investment. Without large-scale intervention, she warns the country's already fragile humanitarian situation could deteriorate further. The crisis was also highlighted by the International Committee of the Red Cross on March 22nd, coinciding with World Water Day. The ICRC reported that 33 million Afghans, around 80% of the population, are now facing severe water shortages. The impact is devastating, affecting people, affecting public health, food security, and the economy. Despite these alarming warnings, Afghanistan's Ministry of Water and Energy has pushed back against the ICRC's findings. Officials claim the government has launched several projects to combat drought, including the construction of new water dams. But as the crisis deepens, the question remains, will these efforts be enough to secure Afghanistan's water future? Aid agencies say more action is needed and time is running out. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for AnewZ.
Thousands of Muslims gathered at the Grand Mosque in Mecca overnight to observe Laylat al-Qadr, one of the holiest nights in Islam. The night holds deep spiritual significance, marking what many believe to be the first revelation of the Quran.
Thousands of Muslims hold overnight prayer in Mecca Grand Mosque. Laylat al-Qadr, or the Night of Power, is considered the most sacred night in Islam. It is believed to be when the first verses of the Quran were revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. While its exact date is unknown, many Muslims observe it on the 27th night of Ramadan. In Mecca, the Grand Mosque was filled with worshippers offering special prayers and seeking blessings. Many spent the night in deep reflection, believing that prayers on this night carry immense spiritual rewards. Across the Muslim world, similar gatherings took place as people embraced the opportunity for forgiveness and renewed faith during this sacred time.
That's the world news for the hour. Keep watching AnewZ for more updates from around the world.